Hello and welcome to another episode of The Cricketeers, where we are joined by a very special guest to deconstruct the upcoming South African tour of Pakistan, Aatif Nawaz, comedian extraordinaire. Can I say that? Are you a comedian extraordinaire?
I think so. I think I just got to extraordinaire. I think I was like at aspiring and then established. I think I've gone from established to extraordinaire. Yeah, I think
It's now cricket, cricket broadcast journalist and comedian extraordinaire. Aatif, it is so good to have you. How are you doing?
I'm great. It's lovely to chat to you guys all the way across the world, and I'm really well. And I mean, I've been talking about nothing but cricket, so I feel like it's good that some other people in the world get to hear it as well.
Well, I've got some bad news for you. This show's name is a complete misnomer. It's not at all actually about cricket. What we want to do is talk to you about professional stand-up comedy.
Oh yeah, no problem. Well, I mean, sometimes they don't need to be exclusive, so I think Niro's son Dick Bella has got a future in both. Let's put it that way.
And you thought that you were the only one.
Oh, he's so funny. Like I really, especially because of all the Tim Payne stuff that's been flying around recently. It was just so refreshing to see keepers be what keepers are supposed to be, just silly, funny, jokey, and like light jabs. Like not anything personal. I really like. I think I don't know about anybody else. When I watched that video, that little compilation video of him sledging the England players, I just fell in love with him all over again. It reminded me of the time where I was at a press conference in Pakistan for Pakistan Sri Lanka, and one of the journalists asked him a question, but didn't realize that he wasn't the person that. So I think he asked him the question as if it was Angelo Matthews, but he was actually Dick Weller. He goes, no, you're thinking of Matthews. I'm Dick Weller. I'm the other Sri Lankan guy. He's pretty funny. He's a funny dude. I like him.
I like him too. We've got a few funny dudes with the gloves in Pakistan as well.
Yeah, we do. I mean, they're funny for different reasons.
Different kind of comedy. Yeah.
I guess comedy is subjective. Some people like jokes and banter. Some people like dropping 8 catches in an innings. I mean, I'm not here to judge. I'm not here to.
It's so funny because I wasn't trying to set you up to say that, but I think like some telepathic link still exists that I wanted you to say that.
No, I know.
I think.
I feel bad. Like Pakistani keepers, like Mohammad Rizwan's been. I think he's not got the brunt of it so far, but historically, Pakistani wicket keepers get a lot of stick. Like you go back to Kamran Akmal for obvious reasons, the whole Moin Khan Rashid Latif thing, and then like Sarfraz and Yorngate. I felt so bad for him because he was obviously upset about it. I don't know if you saw, he tweeted in Urdu as well. Like he said, like "Itna bura lagta ho to," something. I don't know, something like. If you hate me so much, then just, maybe I should go away or whatever. Like, he was genuinely really about it. And, and I understand, like, he won the Champions Trophy, and the lack of, like, gratitude isn't the strongest suit of Pakistan cricket fans. Let's put it that way.
And it's actually a good, almost serious point that you've raised there, and it makes for interesting conversation.
Maybe.
And we've seen a little bit of it with the India-Australia series as well. Some amount of abuse is arguably part of the job. Maybe not abuse, that's the wrong word. Some amount of criticism is part of the job, right? But when does that criticism cross over into something, like you said, lacking gratitude, or I mentioned abuse? When does it cross over? Where's that line? Let's get a comedian to tell us.
It's hard to define, really. I mean, history is full of these wonderful moments, of, Brandes, McGrath, and Botham, and there's so many great great insults and sledges from over the years that we actually love. But also, I mean, I'm quite old school. I still think of it as the gentleman's game, right, or the ladies' game now, right? So the idea is you play it with a sense of decorum. Okay, you don't have to be,
so
especially
English.
in the last year. I mean, yeah, it is. I know it is a really English thing, but over the last year, with like, racial issues being highlighted and, discrimination being highlighted, I think right now, especially, is a time to mind your P's and Q's, to try and set a standard. Particularly for the captain of Australia,
let me jump in because I've got a rebuttal for that. So obviously, like, I grew up in England as well, but we maybe didn't have the exact same English experience. I grew up with a lot of people who always minded their P's and Q's and maybe were, like judges of Supreme Courts and things like that. but they're still real good at being racist. They just do it in a
Yeah.
different way. Or abusive or sexist, misogynistic, whatever, right? They just do it with a smile on their face and with please and thank you added in, and hopefully in a way so the colonized people maybe don't understand, by being a little bit more polysyllabic with our English, or at least they think that we might not understand. So
I
I get your
totally
point
with you.
about the gentleman's
And
game,
I
and I
take
get
yours as well. Like
exactly.
you're right. You're right. By the way, people do behave one way sometimes, and then behind closed doors or even in different environments, they'll like people who listen to rap music and just censor themselves when certain words come, but when they're on their own, they're really leaning into those words. So I understand what you're saying, but like when you're like the captain, like let's talk about it directly, right? Instead of going around it, I'm thinking about Tim Payne. When you're the captain of Australia, like all of Australia is watching you. Despite like the circumstances that got you to that position, there's kids, particularly in Australia,
Yeah.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds watching, thinking, oh, this is the captain of Australia. I think, regardless of whatever is inside, and I don't think Tim Payne has any. I don't really know the guy. I don't think he's a racist. But my point is
Yeah.
like your behavior has to be on point, because you're representing a huge thing. You're in a position where you're in a position of influence. You're in a position where you're going to actually have an impact on the way people absorb the game and think about what's reasonable and unreasonable. So
Yeah.
that's my only kind of thing on the field. But I do think, I like those little funny moments on the pitch all the time, particularly with keepers. And, in terms of criticism, I think more about sort of fans. We like, as fans, we, particularly Pakistani fans, we get super passionate. We don't like to lose. We certainly don't like to be, one-sidedly smashed as we were in New Zealand. So we don't like that. But, some of the critique that's hit this Pakistan team, I don't know, like I've seen more than one Pakistani cricket commentator suggest that, the Pakistani selectors respond more to like media pressure or or fan pressure than they do to merit or what have you. I don't know if that's the case. I'm not on the inside, but I there's evidence that suggests that might be the case sometimes.
Yeah, I feel that. And I'm actually glad that you brought this back to the thing that we're supposed to be talking about, Pakistan, because that is
seamless.
Look at that. Look at that. Genius. Absolute professional. So this week I've talked to a few Pakistani outlets about, Pakistan going forward, Pakistan and South Africa, and still deconstructing a little bit of what happened here in New Zealand. And I don't know if I just watched something totally different to every Pakistan cricket fan in the world, or if I don't know whether I've become, I don't want to say like more objective at this point, but I don't know, maybe loyalties are watered down or whatever the situation is, but I feel like I watched a totally different game. Because while people in the media are asking me questions about Pakistan's like embarrassing performance, this, that, and the other, and should heads roll and what heads should roll, I'm like, guys, this is a haphazard test side that is or was ranked around about I think number 7 at the time that they toured New Zealand, coming to a country where last year I watched England and India, 2 conclusively better test sides, tour this country with no hope of even touching anything close to a win in either match. What do you expect? And what is fair to expect in a situation like those guys came into, especially with isolation, not justifying breaking of quarantine rules, but I just thought, well, what do we expect? I think if circumstances may have been different and Babar Azam would have been playing, maybe you could have honestly said, oh, I thought we'd get a win out of there or sneak closer to a draw or whatever, right? You can be optimistic, particularly with your best batsman, who is one of the best batsmen in the world and does make a decent percentage of Pakistan's batting score, in the last couple of years. But like, what did you expect? So I'm talking to these outlets and they're all like baying for blood, like really like, oh, should so-and-so be fired and should this happen? And I'm like, guys, like, can we for 1 second pause and look at why New Zealand, I know Adam really is all talked out with New Zealand, but I'm going to bring it around. Why is New Zealand so good at home? Why have they been so successful over the last 2 years? And consistency is a major factor in that. So this whole thing that the Pakistan selectors have done is go for heads rolling or selections changing or whatever and eschew consistency. Again, which is a thing that has happened. We've watched like how many times in our lifetimes Pakistan cricket refusing to be consistent or refusing to believe in the power of consistency. So having said that, what do you think of the selection drama that we've seen?
I mean, it's a really safe position for Mohammed Wasim, the new chairman of selectors, to come into as well, because he can, like, he's got the cushion of saying, oh well, it's a home series, we can flood youngsters. It's a good opportunity in friendly environments, and he can point to like the dearth of Qaeda Azam Trophy statistics, and that's fine. I think overall, I think if you come through a series in New Zealand the way the likes of Shan Masood and Haris Sohail had, I think you'd be doing really well not to get dropped.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you, I think you made a really good point on one of the news outlets about how well New Zealand did, and the way Jameson's come through and become the superstar for New Zealand and a game changer. What we might have witnessed is just the beginning of like this path of destruction he runs through world cricket. And when you talk about role models, like I can see this tall, handsome bowler from New Zealand being this next humongous star in world cricket, if they get behind him the right sort of way. But you're right. I think expectations were high, but you got to remember the way people like that old narrative of like, oh, you can't win away from home. You can, it's harder to win away from home. Like it's been turned on its head by performances like India. We talk about our young squad in Pakistan. Absolutely, not a lot of test matches. Azhar is the most capped player. But and then you got Shaheen leading the attack with like 13 tests to his name. But India played like they gave 5 debuts against Australia. They won away from home. We didn't have Babar, okay, but they didn't have Kohli. So with Pakistan, there's a sense of, I'm not saying it's a fair, side by side.
One addendum: India couldn't do it here. They didn't even get close to doing it.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
You're right. It's not. It's just that envy of achievement. And I think it's been a while since Pakistan managed to go away and pull something that was satisfactory to, because you got to remember, it's a very exciting team. Like Pakistan is a very exciting team, great players, potential to do incredible things. When they don't, I mean, even that moment, like I don't know if you like, my favorite bit of the New Zealand, probably the whole tour, was when Fawad got his ton, and 10 years apart from each ton. Like it was such a beautiful moment, and the memes. I don't know if you guys saw them. I made one as well. My heart will go on. One I thought was really funny. Like it was a beautiful thing. But he's gonna be like, if Pakistan do well in South Africa, I beg your pardon, against South Africa, I think Fawad's gonna be a really key player. But like, if you think that level of criticism was bad, like if they lose to South Africa at home, and this is completely unreasonable because on paper and in the rankings, I believe South Africa's right up there. So South Africa's like a strong team. They won their last away series in Pakistan in 2007, I think. And they I think they won in 2013 as well. I could be wrong about that one.
They did.
I mean, if they lose to them, hellfire will rain down upon the Pakistan team, and it's completely unfair. But that's just the fan following we've got.
It's so funny that I'll let Adam say something in a second. I'm just hyper aware that the poor guy has not spoken in ages, but it's so funny that you say that. Because yesterday I spoke to a South African outlet and I said the exact same thing. Home series, banking on like home ground advantage, all of that. But this South African side, the only time that people really lose away series, the only time that away teams really win outside of their homes is when they're very evenly matched or close to evenly matched with their competition. So obviously Pakistan, middling type of like test team, lower middle test team versus New Zealand in their own home, never going to happen. Australia, India, that are thereabouts with each other anyway. Away, it's really up for grabs depending on conditions, depending on the players that you've got. So this South Africa side is not only like ranking wise exactly where Pakistan are, but some of the new inclusions are exciting. They've got players, like good players of spin, like genuinely good players of spin. They've got experienced guys. They've got Quinton de Kock, who is, I don't know why we don't talk about him being the ridiculous talent that he is as often as we should, but we don't. We just forget about him. They've got people like, they've got Bavuma, they've got Rabada, they've got reverse being a factor. It is such a packed It's such a packed South African side. They are a good touring team anyway. The sides are evenly matched, and they've got a couple of like nuggets in that team that mean that they could win. They're smart enough to bring multiple spinners to Pakistan.
Yeah.
They know what they're
Yeah,
doing.
and they've been really smart about the ones that they've picked as well. Sorry, Adam, I think you're gonna say that. I'm just gonna say like the British Shumpsy, like on paper, doesn't have the best average. I think his overall average is like 32 or something. But when you look at his average to right-handers, it's like 21.79 or something. And Pakistan's got 9 right-handers. So I mean that kind of strategy, and then obviously Aiden Markham as well. I'll tell you about his numbers later, but he's incredible. And like these are conditions that they've been really smart and cerebral in their approach, and I really like that from South Africa. They're not here to just make up numbers and just get through a tour. They're here to win the thing.
Well, it's going to be a fascinating series because when you look at South Africa, they're rebuilding themselves. That plethora of great players that they've had over the last like 10 or 15 years have kind of gone out of this current side. And you look at them, and there are still some weaknesses in there. And like we talk about the spinners, I mean, that's surely a clear advantage to Pakistan because you've got Maharaj, he's a competent spinner, but he's not in that kind of Yasir Shah category. Shamsi's an experience, and they've got, I think, George Lind, who's, I don't even think he's played a test match for South Africa yet. So, I mean, that's got to be a clear-cut advantage for Pakistan. And you look at their middle order as well without the AB de Villiers, obviously at the top we all know Hashim Amla, etc. So, I mean, I think I think they've got weaknesses in their team, and I think it's going to be really fascinating trying to kind of see how they play in conditions that they wouldn't have played in before. I mean, UAE is a completely different kind of environment than playing in Pakistan's backyard. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think Faf du Plessis was interviewed recently. He said something along the lines of these pitches are much flatter. And I think in the same interview, Kagiso Rabada offered the fascinating insight that we think there's going to be some reverse swing about. Like that's wow. I was really blown away by that. I don't think anybody's ever made that.
Rabada cut him some slack because like he's never played in Pakistan. This is a mythical. He's a very young guy. We forget how young he is because we've been watching him for so long. But he has never even really. He has no idea. And I think a lot of people do walk into a situation thinking, "Oh, UAE and Pakistan must be similar conditions wise," which is cute. But then we've got to remember that cricket still thinks like the entire subcontinent as the same condition, subcontinental conditions. Like, what are we talking about, guys? Bangladesh, Sri Lanka. These individual countries have so much diversity. So the subcontinental conditions idea, I think there's definitely advantage Pakistan, but just in the sense that I don't think that this is going to be the cakewalk that Pakistan would have wanted for that experimentation, especially after having some criticism in the media, a lot of criticism in the media, a lot. Yeah. To me, the concept of 9 uncapped players, well, actually, I think today there was an announcement, maybe there were 3 people dropped. So I think maybe 7 uncapped players named in a test side, potentially. That's insane. To me, that's not you going back to the drawing board. That's you throwing the drawing board away. What do you guys think?
What do you reckon, Adam?
What do I reckon? Like me and Taz have had a few discussions about this. I reckon I'm dropping Shah Massoud.
Okay, the word is argument.
I reckon dropping Shah Massoud was a little bit rough. I know he had a bit of a tough time in New Zealand, but loads of other players have come over here and struggled recently. And we got to remember, like the last time he played in Pakistan, he scored 200s. In the last 3 tests he's played at home. So, and then we obviously think of the Tour of England, he got that 100 in the first test. So, look, I would have kept with him for like at least a series to see how he would actually perform at home. And then maybe if he didn't perform well, then you drop him after that. But at least give these guys an opportunity to play in their own backyard. Because it seems like every team seems to struggle away, as Taz mentioned, unless teams are evenly matched. And I mean, I remember like Kane Williamson a couple of years ago went to Sri Lanka and had a poor series there. We're going to drop guys whenever they have poor series away. You know what I mean? Look how well he's done at home. So, I mean, obviously Shane's on the same kind of category as Kane. I'm not going to say that, but I mean, give him a chance.
I'm with you. I'm totally with you. I think it's unfortunate timing really for him because he had the last test tour he had was against England, also in difficult conditions. And, again, without the chance to really stamp himself down. If you look at the last time he played in Pakistan against, I think it was Sri Lanka, in December 2019, God, that feels like a long time ago. He just didn't like. He looked like a completely different player. And also, since he's been dropped, he's been playing in the Pakistan Cup, which is a 50-over competition, granted, but he's already been showing great form, already getting back into it, and that's a credit to the domestic structure, really, that it's there and it encourages players to stay involved. And there's a smaller group of players, and you can see people building it. I quite like the new domestic structure, but I think it's like a casualty of war, really, Sean Masood. I don't think his career is. I think he's got a long way ahead of him. I'm sure he'll be back in the mix soon. He's really talented and also just very, very well liked in the setup. There was a while where they were talking about him as a potential captaincy candidate, but I think he just wasn't quite enough of an automatic pick to be in that conversation for any great depth. But yeah, I mean, Pakistan's hopes in Pakistan, they will rely heavily on the old guard. And the new guard is very exciting. I think the 3 players that were dropped from the squad were Abdullah Shafiq and Kamran Ghulam. Oh, Kamran Ghulam, that one was heartbreaking. I was really hoping to see him play. But I guess of the 2 new batsmen, it was going to be Imran Butt or Kamran Ghulam, and Imran Butt's been given the nod. I've got a lot of time for Kamran Ghulam, by the way. I think this guy's going to be a star in the future. Credit again. The PCB, the way they've organized the domestic structure, they made it so accessible. You can sit and watch the whole thing on YouTube. I watched countless hours of Qaid-e-Azam Trophy this year. Probably the first time in my life, like in England, because we could never watch it here before. Like if you happen to be in Pakistan when it's on, that's great. It's on TV all day, you can watch it. But they've beautifully put it together and broadcast it, and it's been fantastic to watch.
It's a good production.
Yeah, Kamran was a big star.
It was great. It was on YouTube as well, wasn't it?
Sorry?
It was on YouTube, wasn't it?
Yeah, the whole thing was put out there on their YouTube channel free of charge. They made a little bit of advertising revenue. I think overall they made a loss on it, but it was worth it just to get that investment in Pakistani cricket and get those eyeballs on that domestic structure. And also just be, that's such a roll of the dice, man. Can you imagine any other cricket board saying, you know what the hell, all of it, let's put it on YouTube. Let's do something. Let's put it over the top. I mean, I know actually New Zealand and West Indies was on YouTube, but just generally speaking,
that was only for foreign markets. That was only for foreign markets where there were no broadcasters and there was like enough of an interest. So it was a last minute decision. That's why it went on. It's not like we get New Zealand's domestic cricket on YouTube here. We don't. It's behind a paywall.
That's even more impressive than for the Pakistani guys, because that way they've managed to negotiate a television deal and have retained rights to it on YouTube. Lovely. They can have their cake and eat it too. This is why we invented diabetes in Lahore, by the way. So not Lahore. The first test match is in Karachi. And I think I'm expecting big things from Fawad again. I don't know where he's going to fit into the batting order with the way they're going to revamp it with a new batsman. No obvious option to partner up with Abid Ali at the top. I guess you could open up with Azhar Ali. I would find that a little bit awkward myself, but that's probably what they'll go with. But Fawad is his record at Karachi is exceptional. He's played 26 games there. He scored more than 2,300 runs, 10 centuries, and an average of 68.8. So this is the best opportunity Fawad has to really. He got the ton in New Zealand. Very impressive. Well done. Lost the match.
When Kane Williamson plays at Hamilton, plays at Seddon Park.
So what you're saying, Aatif, is you're saying that if you're a betting man, put money on Fawad Alam being the top run scorer in the first test. Is that what you're saying?
Do you know, a very good friend of mine was telling me yesterday that there was absurd odds on one of the betting sites. I don't know which one was. They were giving you something like 66-1 on Fawad Alam being top scorer, and I said put an absurd sum of money on it. I myself, stay clear because broadcaster, must be impartial. But nonsense. But I said to 66. Are you crazy? Some betting sites are not very good at handicapping these things, but wherever you are, if you're having a friendly with somebody, I think Fawad is a good shout. The only thing that could hamper it from being top scorer is being far down the order, as they've kind of opted to put him at 5 or 6 recently. So
also does Babar Azam's back.
Yeah, and that's true. That's the other thing. Babar Azam is back. I think there's always a ton of expectation on Babar Azam. He's almost treated like how the Melbourne Stars treat Glenn Maxwell. There's a weight of expectation.
That's a great reference because I know just how much BBL you're watching.
I love the BBL. It's my favorite. But like it's there's that weight of expectation, but it's that expectation that translates into the Graham Thorpe 79 rather than the Steve Smith double hundred. Yeah, this is a very strange, very specific kind of example I'm giving, but I feel like you'll feel me.
I totally understand the example, but the one thing that I'm going to remind you of, so it's so funny because we need to stop saying very similar things, but the amount of people who have asked me about expectation in Babar Azam, and I've said, so everything that I've seen him up close and personal with, I have felt that he is someone that does not let expectation get to him. Now, that does not mean that every single game you're going to have a blinder. Obviously not. Everyone is only human, but more often than not, like he doesn't get flustered. He doesn't let things get on top of him. It's a very impressive quality. However, I'm also going to add to that. I know there's only 3 matches, 4 innings worth of data, and it is the smallest sample size in the world. But that man's home test average is like 202. 202. If teams are allowed to believe that Kyle Jamieson would continue like having like his current average throughout his career, then I am allowed to believe that Babar Azam will keep up this average in Pakistan at least, if not anywhere else.
It's a fair argument.
Yeah, totally. Listen, I'm with you. As long as Kyle Jamieson only plays in New Zealand, he'll retain that average. And and Babar, I obviously eventually, things will even out. I hope they'll even out in his average, only because I want him to play a ton of cricket, and I want him to play a ton of cricket in Pakistan. And the more he plays there, eventually things will look a little bit more normal.
It might not be 202, yeah.
Yeah, it might not be. It'll probably be like 201. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to see him play at home as well, under that expectation, with the captaincy back. Because despite the result, Mohammad Rizwan, far from just grazed himself with the captaincy, he looked really good. And it wasn't quite Rahane, but he's put in. I think he's done his chances not a lot of harm in the long term. The way he carried himself as captain, Rizwan.
So when the Babar Azam as captain conversation was happening, when Pakistan's decision was being made, you mentioned Shan Masood, and I agree with you. He was on that rung just below, and his problem was that his selection is not automatic. He has not cemented his spot in that side. However, the 2 guys who have cemented their spots in the side that were very seriously considered were, of course, Babar and Mohammad Rizwan. And that was a very serious conversation, as far as I know, between like selectors and management and everything. And when I found out that conversation was happening, I have been a fan of wicketkeeper batsmen. So, of course, I've loved Mohammad Rizwan for a number of years, a long time before he even had when Sarfraz's place was really cemented and not at risk or anything like that. However, everything, and I followed this guy for a long time because I thought this might be the first time Pakistan has a genuine good wicketkeeper, at least like in my memory. So I followed the guy for a while, and I thought automatically I was like, that's the guy. First of all, being English, I know better than automatically making your best batsman captain. Right? For no other reason other than he's your best batsman. So not a fan of that in the first place. Not a fan of putting that excess workload on a player that I need to focus on keeping his average at 202. And also not a fan of not understanding that captaincy is more about man management and strategy than it is, your individual on-field performance or capacities or ceiling. So for me, it was automatic. I was like, of course it's Rizwan. He's got the head for it. He's got the composure. He's got the right temperament where he has a little fire in him, but he can sit back and be cool and calm and collected when he needs to be. So for me, it was automatic, but the PCB didn't seem to agree.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Also, it was more ethnically, it was a better representation. I know in Pakistan, everybody gets a little bit awkward when the captain of the team isn't from Lahore or Karachi. It's like all of Pakistan ends with Lahore and Karachi. But listen, that squad,
it's like Pakistans
particularly the one that came to
anymore.
England,
what kind of world is this?
Well, they've taken over. They've taken over the team. We've got a much more diverse Pakistan team. And having a captain that can speak all of the languages, that can speak Pashto, that can communicate with all of the team members, because you got to remember, a lot of these guys are coming from different backgrounds. Some of them are, very well educated, and some of them, the cricket is the first thing they ever did with their lives. You got to remember, people management is a huge part of captaincy, particularly in the modern day when you're in bubbles and you're away from home, and it's just everything is so bizarre around you. And then you've got social media and the attention and the psychological impact that has as well on you. I thought the way they looked after Naseem in England was phenomenal. I had a few chats with him, and he told me about the way everybody would look after him. He especially had nice things to say about Imran Khan, the cricketer. The other one's a cricketer. The one in the squad, the current playing Imran Khan, not that Imran Khan. So he had so many nice things to say about how funny he was, entertaining he was. Iman as well. He's got a lot of lovely reviews from the players just for being a nice guy. And like Rizwan, as somebody from like the north, the KPK, the north of Pakistan, like he's a better representation of what the team needs now. And I understand this, and I know this might upset somebody who's a huge fan of Babar Azam as captain. I'm not saying he's a bad captain. I don't think he's a great captain. Yeah, I think he might grow into that eventually. He's certainly a great batsman. As you say, Taz, maybe we're better off letting him be a great batsman, taking that load off on some and putting it on somebody who can view the game. Hey, I'm a huge fan of keeper captains as well. You're behind the stuff to see the whole game.
Yeah, exactly. You get to see your bowlers, you get to be in the thrust of the game every single ball. But I think at the end of the day, it's more about the people involved. So you mentioned Pashto speakers, so I'm going to come on to a question. Zafar Gohar being dropped. What do you think?
I feel really bad for him. Now in Pakistan, particularly in the Ghazi Azam Trophy, you've got like a dearth of options, right? So if you're a chief selector, you've got the problem of having too many options to turn to, and it's almost like when you were. Like, I'll explain it to you using a very modern example. Okay, do you remember when you went to like a shop when you were 11 years old and bought a CD album for the first time?
God, yes.
What was your first?
Well, the first album that I bought was Nirvana, Nevermind.
Okay, good choice. What about you, Tess?
So the first album that I ever bought was Dr. Dre's seminal work, Chronic 2001. I was probably about 10 years old at the time, and I had to blackmail my older cousin to buying it for me because it was like parental guidance rated. So yeah, a little bit different.
Yeah, no, mine was The Fat of the Land by The Prodigy. And, the point is we can all remember them. Like, we can all remember all three of those albums. Because it's not the way we consume music now is completely different. Like, you'd go out, you'd buy an album. It was a whole experience. You'd come home, you'd put it in the CD player, you'd listen to it from start to finish. You'd look at the cover notes as well, the liner notes in the thing. Whereas now you don't appreciate music anymore. You just have like streams and things are just happening in the background while you're playing PlayStation, and you're barely engaging with it in the same way. And I really feel like cricket is similar. I don't remember exactly what my link was going to be now because of that. It was a really apt analogy. What were we talking about before I asked the album thing?
Oh my God, Aatif has gone on like an amazing detour, and it's
Zafar, wasn't it? You were talking about Zafar. His selection.
Yes, exactly. Thank you, Adam. Adam smashes it out of Eden Park. I like it. So basically, what it was, right? Like you've got this dearth of options. Like on Spotify, you have an infinite amount of music to listen to. You can just skip forward to the next one whenever you want to. When you only had those 12 tracks on that one CD and it was finite, you would listen to it, and you would listen to it over and over again until the CD started skipping and your favorite song would no longer play and you had to get a second version of the CD. There's this dearth of options for Pakistan right now, particularly with spin, and they've opted to go for Sajid Khan, right, to partner with Yasir. I think Yasir is probably going to play, and then Sajid is probably second choice. If they play two spinners, then Sajid will play as well. And he's got a pretty good record as well in the Ghazi Azam Trophy. He got 67 wickets this season, averaging 25. That's not bad. When you talk about spin, Pakistan is a country that's produced like extraordinary spinners, but they don't always have the longest shelf lives. It's almost like they have this immediate impact and they'll rush to 100 test wickets, but then teams will start working on them and trying to understand them. So I don't think Zafar, I think it's super harsh on Zafar that he's been dropped, but I reckon he'll be back at some stage and he'll have plenty of chances to make an impact as long as, Pakistan keep playing Test cricket.
I think that's probably a fair comment about Zafar Gohar. I think that for me, it's a really poor decision, and I'll tell you why. I could not think of a worse place to debut a spinner than where Pakistan chose to debut Zafar Gohar. Despite that, he, let's say, rose to the challenge. It's an absolute graveyard for spinners, and he bowled pretty damn well there. I know the figures won't reflect it, but he was good. He made the batsman, try a couple of things. Maybe it meant going for runs, but he did everything he could. And as a batsman, he basically outperformed my expectations of him. And I mean that as an absolute positive. He's a pretty decent batsman. He was in England about 2 years ago, like playing club cricket, like developing just his ability to play in different match situations. And he did a pretty spectacular job of it. So I thought, terrible place to give the man a chance, but took the bull by the horns. Why would you then get rid of him in a place where it makes sense to be playing him in the first place? And he does give you that additional batting. So for me, it was a really weird one. You mentioned the concept of Pakistani spinners that rush to 100 wickets and then teams start working on them. He's not a spinner, but he has been dropped, and it's probably for a similar reason. Mohammad Abbas.
Yeah, I think Mohammad Abbas is, again, is a casualty of war. Really, he didn't have the best of it in New Zealand. It's not a fair place to judge players, as you said. Like, you've made this super clear, right? And I'm on board with that. Like, the New Zealand tour isn't the place where you start breaking down exactly how good a player is, because it's a difficult environment historically and presently to perform in for a visiting team, never mind one that's been in lockdown and wasn't allowed to practice for us and all that kind of stuff. There were loads of reasons / excuses, but yeah, I think Abbas has had a heavy workload. He's played a lot of cricket this year, and he's been at that forefront of that Pakistan attack. I have no doubt if he played in this Pakistan series, he would have done really well against South Africa. And I'm sure he'll go on to do well again when they tour, other places. But it's not the worst thing in the world for Abbas to get some rest, and to just take one series off. He'll feel a little bit hard done by, because like Zafar Gohar, he got the difficult conditions and he didn't get the slightly friendlier conditions at home. But he's such a class act. Again, just knowing you've got him in the him waiting on standby, it's just a great thing to have, and a great resource to have in the bunker. And then you have to find room for Hassan Ali. This is the challenge, right? So Hassan Ali had such a good tournament this year in the Guide Azam Trophy, with the bat as well, with that extraordinary 100 in the final that tied the final of the Guide Azam Trophy. What a match that was. But he's taken 43 wickets, something like that, averaging 20. He's back to the kind of Hassan Ali that we're used to seeing. This Hassan Ali that is so explosive and can get you that wicket taking, partnership breaking, exciting bowler. You got to bring him. You got to find room to reintegrate him into the international setup. And I guess this is a warmer environment to do it in than New Zealand would be, or England a little bit later this year would be, or India after that. It's going to be a tough old year for Pakistan. This is one of the few opportunities to get your players back in a little bit. And one thing I'm kind of really hoping for from this squad is Tabish. I've long been a fan of Tabish. He's like a stalwart of Pakistani domestic cricket. 36 years old, unlikely to get a debut, but I almost feel like, I don't know if you guys remember Martin Bicknell, the Surrey and England cricketer, right? Yep. Who got a debut in his youth, didn't really bang, and then had a long break, and then eventually got a little swan song in the England team in his sort of mid to late 30s. I feel like Tabish has kind of earned that on the back of the long and illustrious domestic career. I suspect he'll sit out the first test, and if Pakistan do well, if anything close to dominant, you'll see Tabish in the second test match. But I think that would be quite nice. He might be a one and done, one test match career type of thing, but he deserves that one cap at least. So selfishly, I'd like to see that.
You just like it because you guys are in the same age category, and it gives your Your cheeky off spin some hope. That's why.
Yeah, no, listen, I love it. This is why I get excited when Jimmy Anderson gets 6 wickets in innings as well, because he's 38. And, you know,
I love
it
the old
gives me.
guys too.
Yeah, listen,
I'm rooting for those old guys too.
When Fawad, like literally the moment that Fawad Alam came out to bat, that day that he scored a century, Adam was like, this is his day. He's going to score a century. And I was like, chillax, because I've heard this before. Okay, long-standing Pakistan fan. I've had faith in players, but he was like, no, it's his day. It's his day. And he just kept going and going. And it felt at some point like I was living with the Karachiite. That's how it felt to me. I was like, wow, this guy's really into Fawad Alam. Like, relax, okay? And then he made a century, and it just hit me. I was like, oh yeah, it's because he likes the oldies. He believes
And man buns. Old guys and man buns, Taz. That's why I was behind Siraj all the way. Like, you know, and the beard. So
Yeah, you've got you choosing the hair wisely. I like it.
So we've talked about Haris. Maybe the less said the better about Haris. We've talked about Abbas. We've talked about Shan. We've talked about Zafar. We've talked about Hassan Ali. There's one guy that's been recalled into the squad that we haven't touched on. And you and I actually have seen him up close a few times. He went that time that he played in Scotland, Mohammad Nawaz. I don't think we've ever talked about what you think of Nawaz as a player, but this might be the time.
Yeah, so I mean, it's going to be a straight shootout between him and Fahim Ashraf, based completely and totally on conditions. If they feel like they want that spinning all-rounder, they'll go with Nawaz. I think it's hard to leave out Fahim Ashraf based on his form. Like, he's one of the few, that he was one of the few sort of success stories of that difficult New Zealand tour. And also, again, another player with those, long-term captaincy aspirations for him. He can do that job for Pakistan going forward. I think it complete. They've got, this is a beautiful thing. It's a gift and a curse. They've got options. They can either play one spinner. They can play Yasir and then play Mohammad Nawaz as your all-rounder, or you can play 2 spinners and 2 seamers, and then give yourself Fahim as your third or bowling all-rounder, knowing you've also got Azhar Ali potentially to turn to with the ball as well. I've seen he's been warming up a lot. Like the Pakistani cricket social media guys are really on it, showing you what they're doing in their training. You get a lot of shots of Sarfraz Ahmed doing sit-ups for some reason. Like, just look out for that. Like, every third video is Sarfraz Ahmed doing sit-ups. I don't know what that's.
The last time that I saw Sarfraz, he was like me and Adam and a friend of ours getting a cheeky kebab at 1 a.m. So, and that was like, what, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago?
If he's been doing this as the PCB social media accounts, let me know. He's going to be ripped like Dolph Lundgren by the time we see him next time. There's a topical reference for you kids.
Aatif, one guy that's been selected in the test squad, like, you love the BBL, and I know you probably would have followed this guy for the last few seasons, is Haris. Well, he's a bit of a left field selection, isn't he? Like, I guess Pakistan over the last few years have lacked that kind of 150k bowler that can, reverse swing the ball. And I wonder whether, obviously, looking at the tour of New Zealand, they kind of lack that kind of fire in their bowling attack. Whether they've just taken a punt on Haris Rel, maybe looking for the future to kind of get that X factor bowler. What are your thoughts about that? Because he's only played 3 first-class matches.
Yeah, I think he kind of made a name for himself in almost exclusively in T20 cricket. In the Big Bash last year with the Melbourne Stars, he made a huge impact, and that's what the year before last, I beg your pardon, and that's what got him into contention for Pakistan in the first place for the T20 side. I think over the last year, he spent so much time around the Pakistan team. They would have seen a lot of him. So even though he was on that really long England stint that they did, where they were in quarantine, he was there for the T20 games, but he was just so ever present. And I think because Misbah and Waqar Yunus and Yunus spent that much time with those players, I think they get a feel for what it is they're capable of and what it is they're not. You're right. Historically, Pakistan love having that fast bowler. In the last home test series against Sri Lanka, they had Naseem Shah, obviously. And obviously Shaheen is there. Shaheen is ever present, but Shaheen, we don't often think of him as a super quick fast bowler. We think of him as a really effective seam bowler. Like, I see Shaheen, I beg your pardon, as if I was using an Australian example, it would be more towards Glenn McGrath, Jason Gillespie than sort of Brett Lee and
Exactly.
other Mitchell Stark. Like, you know, I see him more as kind of somebody who's going to hold it and be your holding seam bowler. And if you could, in an ideal world, you partner him with like a nice, young, aggressive fast bowler, which Harris definitely can be. Whether he can maintain that over the longer format, I don't know. I don't expect to see him start the first Test match. I could be wrong, but I think maybe this is about creating a little path work for him into that. You got to remember, like the way they pick their teams nowadays, it's not necessarily based on your first class average. It's not well. You know, this team is kind of evened out on that, but often it's not just about your first class average, your first class performance. Sometimes they just see something in you and they want to take a chance and, as you say, take a punt. And I think that's what might be happening here with Harris.
It's a very Pakistan selection, isn't it? Like just one of those left field ones that gets everybody excited. Because I was excited when I heard that he got selected. You know, like, and he's the kind of guy that obviously thrill crowds in the BBL. And the only concern for me would be could he bowl like a whole day? Like he's been bowling 4 over spells. Could he bowl a 20 over day? You know, that's probably one concern.
Absolutely.
And his lack of experience as well. But I mean, the dude's a rare talent. We all know that.
He's quick, and you know that fitness thing is so important. When you look at Jimmy Anderson, he bowled something like 30 overs to take his 6 wickets against Sri Lanka in difficult conditions. Like that's the level of fitness you have to aspire to if you want to play the longest form of the game. You know, at 38 years of age, bowling 30 overs in one day as a seam bowler and taking wickets. Like that's what you got to do nowadays. I'm with you. I think Pakistan are trying to be a little bit unconventional. Maybe Abdullah Shafiq also found himself in that Test squad, and he's not played much Test cricket at all. Now I know he's not made the final 16/17, but you know it just gives you an indication of their thinking. He's a T20, or he's a player who's made his name for himself in T20 cricket, barely played any first class cricket, and has finds himself in the Test probable squad. So I think Pakistan are looking for some out of the box thinking. I think maybe they're trying to pull a rabbit out of the hat, and they're hoping that they'll blood one of these guys and they'll just magically turn in the kind of performance that'll make them look like a genius for selecting him in the first place. But you know, it's hard to say.
So I understand it in one perspective and I have a problem with it in one perspective. What Pakistan, for me, what they've done over the last couple of years is maybe focus a little bit more on white ball cricket and think that if you're a good player, you are an all format player. So even inclusions, and some of it's actually worked, but look at Shadab Khan, look at all the Islamabad United guys playing cricket for Pakistan. They've come in through T20 cricket, great, awesome. And then now they're playing Test cricket. Where it's worked, it's great. However, it sometimes signals a disconnect and an understanding of the structures and the way in which people find red ball success, which is the question that Adam just posed. Can Haris Rauf bowl for an entire day? It's a big question and an unanswered one. Maybe he can. And this is what I like about decisions like this. So it's what Aatif was saying. Sometimes I think it's about personality as much as, seeing something or seeing a talent in a player. It's whether or not a team has chemistry together. It's whether. So let's go back to the Champions Trophy win from 2017. And I know as a Pakistani, like we want to talk about this way too often for a series that was now 4 years ago, but will never leave our hearts because it was that damn good. But I strongly believe that a large component of that win was how everybody meshed together as personalities and came together as a team. Now, I know I'm now talking about the white ball game again, but you can see it. So for New Zealand playing Test cricket right now, with the exception of Daryl Mitchell, who's obviously playing in the absence of Colin de Grandhomme, who was previously injured, and now Kyle Jamieson, who's just a phenomenal find for New Zealand cricket at the moment. This side is a really well-settled side that has mostly been playing together for a number of years. And what they have, and what you see every time, whether they're practicing, whether they're in press conferences, whether they're on the field, is that they really do come together as a unit. There is a drive and a desire, a team kinship, and a winning mentality that's kind of infectious. Whether that comes from captain or whether that comes from consistency or a group of personalities that fit together, that's the question that really nobody has an answer for, and we're all shooting in the dark. So coming from the perspective that if you get the right set of 11 guys on the field, no matter what their individual flaws or talents or breakdowns, if they're chemistry vibes, then, you know, you can produce a match-winning side. If Pakistan is going down that road, so like you said, if it works out, they will look like goddamn geniuses, absolute geniuses. But to me, I just get a little bit of a whiff of, well, they're good at like white ball cricket, so surely they got to be good at this too. That's kind of how Hassan Ali came into the side, and maybe part of why he dropped out of the side. He, you know, started off his test career really well. Then he had a couple of poor performances, and then obviously he had an injury and he was out for a reasonable amount of time. But I remember the really, really, really harsh criticism about Hassan Ali. I think that you and I were probably together when we were watching that harsh criticism of Hassan Ali of he's a T20 player. What's he doing in test flights? So sometimes it works a treat. And then you look like a genius if you're the selection committee. But to me, with Pakistan, I think it's another, like, where's the drawing board? Sorry, we threw it out so long ago that we don't even know. But I don't know. I think years of Pakistan cricket have turned me into a pessimist. Let's talk about the South Africans, okay? So we've talked about Pakistan's bowling attack and their batting. Let's think about the batsmen that Pakistan will be coming up against. There's some names that are definitely worthy of highlight. Dean Elgar, who has just had a weirdly, quietly pretty impressive career, is definitely better in some conditions than he is others. Aiden Markram, who I think is an interesting character that maybe South Africa fans would have expected more from, considering his youth career and some of the starts that he's had in international cricket. He's a good player. I'm not beefing on him, but I would say that he's still lacking some serious components to step into some very big shoes that South Africa have left empty right at the top of the order. Obviously, Faf du Plessis, who is one of the best test players going around, one of the most interesting personalities, like a very compelling, you know, like leadership group kind of guy. QDK, who's absolutely insane. And then, you know, like a couple of batsmen like Rassie van der Dussen, who are maybe in the earlier stages of their international career, but definitely have some weight behind them. What do you think of the batting lineup, and what do you think is going to work for them, and where are they going to falter?
I think it's going to be a tough task for them, to be fair. You know, the Pakistani bowlers, obviously, a lot of them have now had the chance to not only bowl in a little bit of test cricket for Pakistan in Pakistan, but also just played a crap ton of first-class cricket. Like, all of these guys, the one thing they have in common is they've played recently in a lot of first-class cricket. And, you know, we talked about the way the PCB selectors work. They've hedged their bets. They've brought in some T20 specialists in the test squad, but they've also, like, gone with the data and said, well, look, this guy's got the best average and this guy's taken the most wickets, so we must keep him involved. These South African batsmen, they're going to have a challenge. I think some of them are coming in with form. I mean, you mentioned Aiden Markram. I'm quite a big fan of him. I think he's a really good player, and he's played 10 test matches. It was something like, he's got some bizarre record, like fastest South African to 1,000 runs in test cricket, something like that. Yeah. And you know, 55 as an average is pretty good after 10 test matches. This is a big chance for him as well to perform away from home. It's a big chance for all these batsmen, really, because these are unknown conditions for a lot of the world. It's 13 years removed from the last tour, so to actual Pakistan rather than the UAE. So, you know, I think this will be a very, very big challenge, but I expect at least one or two batsmen to rise to the occasion. I certainly expect to see Faf du Plessis do well and lead from the front. And I think Aiden Markram is, like, if I was having an outside bet, Adam, on, you know, the top scorer for South Africa, we were going for Wad Alam with Pakistan, I'd go Aiden Markram for South Africa. South Africa, I think.
Is that right?
So you know who my top two are, because we were literally just talking about this earlier, and I it's frustrating when you have guests on where they say a lot of stuff that you agree with, because you're like, okay, cool, well, where's the spice and the fight coming from? But all of what you said, other than I probably would pick Faf and Rassie, who is a really good player of spin, and he's got serious grit, and I don't know, I have a massive soft spot for him, and I think that he is driven, determined, intelligent. He's a lot of things. So I think that this is going to be a really big series for him. So for me, it's Faf and Rassie. Those are my two outside bets.
Mine's
I mean, if you want to disagree, we can always talk about, like, the degrees of arm bending and throwing again. One major disagreement of all time.
I don't believe in chucking.
Yeah.
What about the bowlers?
Like, if you, for the uninitiated, where were we? I think we were like, I don't even remember where we were. It wasn't Ireland. I think it was after Ireland, but we were having a chat about that. Anyway, yeah.
Oh, I know where it was because Crick and Giff was involved in that disagreement.
Also
We
happened
were
in Scotland.
sitting boundary side at a T20 in Scotland, Pakistan versus Scotland T20 game, and I think it was minutes before, I want to say, Fakhr Zaman smashed a ball that like almost hit me, you, and a couple of other people, and we all did like a little hop out of the way. It was a good day, but we did have a little bit of a disagreement about the biomechanics of throwing versus bowling.
Yeah.
But just thinking about the South African bowlers for a minute, where do you think those wickets are coming from?
Spin. I know I'd like to say the seamers will do well, and the seamers, visiting seamers tend to struggle in Pakistan. But visiting spinners tend to, record their best stats. I mean, we mentioned him earlier, Tabraiz Shamsi. He's got an excellent record against right-handed batsmen, and Pakistan has a gluttony of them. So I think Tabraiz is going to feature in those top wicket-taking marks and stuff. I mean, as Adam said earlier, they do have lots of spin options. But if I was a Pakistani batsman, I'd be watching tapes of Tabraiz right now, particularly if I was right-handed, and just watching that ball, like how it's going to respond off those flatter wickets, and he's going to have a heck of a workload. This is the other thing they're going to get ready for. Like, those long spells in Pakistan can be really killer. Like, in Sri Lanka, where we talked about Jimmy and his incredible long stint against Sri Lanka and 30 overs in a day, and that's very impressive. But those pitches are much softer. There's a lot more give on those knees. Go to Pakistan, it really feels like, the parts of it feel like a full-on Registan, a desert. You know what I mean? Like, it's just so flat and hard. It doesn't give you anything at all. So, I think those spinners it's going to be one of those 40 over days for the spinners type situation.
Because we've got to remember when South Africa went to India a couple of years ago, and was it Maharaj went for close to 200 runs, I think, when Rohit got that massive double century? And they got smashed over in India. Rabada bowled quite well in their series, but the spinners were really ineffective for South Africa on that tour. So, I mean, look, those Maharaj and Shamsi are going to have a massive part to play in this test series, I would have thought, against Pakistan.
Absolutely. Those spinners are going to be all over it. And, you mentioned Rabada. Obviously, we know the South African scheme is really good, particularly Rabada, who can do all sorts of things. But if he gets the ball reverse swinging, I think someone like a Rabada can run you through a tail very quickly in Pakistan. But I feel like I'd like to think that Pakistani top order will be able to handle Rabada, on those pitches. It's not like playing Rabada in South Africa or playing Rabada in England or playing Rabada in Australia or New Zealand. You're playing Rabada in Karachi at the National Stadium, which will give Rabada nothing, right?
Yeah.
So your batsman should be able to ride that out.
So for me, it's probably Ainar Nortje. And but like you said, Pakistan is unforgiving. You got to put a lot in to get anything out. So for me, it's just going to be a question of how fast can he bowl in Pakistan. And if he's getting up like his top speeds, then I think Nortje is probably the guy that's going to rattle Pakistani batsmen the most out of the pace bowlers or the seamers. So, and then it's a matter of spinners. And I think sometimes when you are trying to play people like Rabada in an intelligent manner, it means you occasionally end up gifting Tabraiz Shamsi your wicket. So I am not opposed to the Shamsi equation there. I think that could really work for him. What about the T20s, which come after the test matches? Not to get too ahead of ourselves, but without going too much detail into it, how do you feel about the T20s generally?
I think Pakistanis always feel good about T20s. They offer us the shortest period of time in which things can go wrong. So I think that's probably what it is. Like, it's the least amount of things.
Less time to implode.
Oh God, less time to implode and explode and implode all over again. you know, it's never straightforward. But with T20s, they almost look a little bit more polished. Like I watched I was the only fan, I guess, in the stadium when Pakistan played the T20s in England last summer, and it was quite extraordinary to watch them because they drew the T20 series 1-1 and one match was thrown out. But even in the game they lost, they scored 190 at Old Trafford, and they looked quite slick. So the bowlers, you know, they bowled okay. They had a difficult, you know, it was David Malan on a run. What are you going to do, right? So I just think Pakistan in T20 cricket, they have this comfort, and with these new additions, these new players, they should be able to push a little bit harder. I think Abdullah Shafiq will come back into the running. He's been a little bit disappointing so far. You know, there's chats about Iftikhar and all these guys. I mean, there is some exciting talent there, but you just want to see some results now, like some impressive result rather than 160 plays 145.
I want to see Pakistan back as the #1 T20 side in the world for a ridiculously long run. That's what you want. And when you're coming off of that like short-term legacy, then obviously there's additional pressure, and you think, you know, we've got so many. There really is an overabundance of especially T20 talent in Pakistan. Dime a dozen great T20 players, and that is maybe Pakistan's curse as much as it is your blessing. You want to see results. You don't know how long you wait before you expect to get them. And with fans, even maybe the more measured ones who sit there saying, oh, well, it's reasonable to lose in New Zealand, even they want to see Pakistan back as the #1 T20 side for a number of years where nobody can beat them. It's exciting. It's fun. I actually really like the South African T20 side. I probably think that they are more capable of tight results in Pakistan. I mean, I respect this test side, but I do expect a fair few of these batsmen and bowlers to not be able to adapt in that short amount of time. T20 is a little bit of a different story, and they've got so many guys that I have been following since they've had their domestic careers in South African T20 cricket, and then their Mzansi careers as well. Did I get you into the Mzansi? That was a thing that I did, right?
Yeah, I've followed the Mzansi. I think I've watched everything, every bit of cricket that's been available in the last year. I've been across it in some way, shape, or form. Men's, women's, everything. Ask me about stats from the Rachel Hayhoe Flint Trophy. I got them, guys.
Good man. Well, I'll quickly mention the South Africans I'm most excited about. And again, this is a matter of wanting to see talent translate into results, and then we'll talk about women's cricket, because there's actually a little bit of like Pakistan, South Africa spice that there is definitely a need to discuss. But in terms of the T20 side, Heinrich Klaassen captaining, awesome decision, great domestic T20 record, talented player. Reza Hendricks, who I have enviously watched from afar for a number of years and would like to see all of that promise translated into the international side real soon. Janneman Milan, JJ Smart. So like a lot of very talented players that are really exciting to watch. And a pretty decent team around them. Some cool debuts as well, like Rickleton, or potential debuts anyway. So I think that's going to be and it's similarly placed to Pakistan. A few guys with experience, a few younger guys, a few like domestic like battlers. You know, it's a big mix. And I think that that's a mix that South Africa might have a little bit more confidence in. But like you said, Pakistan's kind of sort of good at T20, even when we don't look so good. Even when you drop down a couple of spots in the rankings, which are, you know, the rankings anyway, Pakistan's kind of sort of good at T20. And I very much expect Pakistan to be good at T20 at home. What about the women's series?
Oh, it's been really fun so far. So at the time of recording, 2 of the games have been played, and they were both nail biters. I really, it's really irritating that no broadcaster is showing them in the UK, and you have to find like, you know, semi-illegal Facebook links to watch it. I don't know if it is illegal. It's not. Sorry?
Don't you get the YouTube live stream?
No, there wasn't an official YouTube live stream because South Africa hosted rather than Pakistani hosted. So as far as I'm aware, there wasn't a YouTube stream for it. But if there is one, send it to me because that'll make life a lot easier.
I'm now just wondering whether I was watching something legal or illegal because it's a coin toss sometimes.
You know, the fact that we have to do that for international women's cricket is a absolute disgrace because, you know, like, you know, particularly in England, right, we were supposedly are the beacons of like, yes, let's spread the game, and we're not India and we don't want to keep the game to ourselves, let's spread the game. Well, right now, you've got a team playing that you're going to be touring later this year. The England women are going to be touring Pakistan for the first time ever in October. Why would you not want to scout your opposition? Why would you not want to put them on TV, highlight them, you know, build up to your series and see exactly what the talent? I don't know. I think they missed an opportunity. I honestly think a lot of people just pay the women's game lip service. And, you know, I guess in this commercial realities or whatever, it's really silly because this has been a great series so far. Now, South Africa.
If we want to talk about commercial realities, I'm just going to jump in with that concept of commercial realities. This sport needs to get real. The entire sport, apart from the IPL, is a money-losing game. The entire sport, the commercial reality is this game loses money. It's just a bunch of nerds that, apart from T20 cricket, this game loses money. We never think about the commercial realities about Test cricket because it comes with prestige and tradition and like elitism and a capacity to believe in one's superiority over other nations and players and all of that. So we just ignore it. New Zealand loses $400,000 for every test match that it holds at home. Yet they're not going to stop playing test cricket. And they should not, right? Like, where part of this game finances the other part of this game. If we're happy to let T20 cricket finance test cricket, we need to start spreading that love. And maybe T20 cricket can finance a little bit of women's cricket for a quick minute until everybody turns into Susie Bates or Sophie Devine or a player that everybody, Elise Perry or, you know, Subnam Ismail.
You're bang on. There's some fantastic names and faces. If I just look at Pakistan for the minute, because that's like my area of expertise is a long shot, but you know what I mean? Like you know, there's some players there that you can build huge advertising campaigns around, marketing campaigns around. They could be the faces of all of these products that the men's team have been. Now, I understand that the men's team have had a fan base for like 70 years now, and you know that's fine, right? But the women's team are only going to build an equivalent fan base if you back them and you give them that platform. I'm not saying take all of the men's budget.
Virat Kohli did not have an Instagram fan base 70 years ago. The game and its Instagram ability and TikTok ability and everything modern is from the last 5 to 10 years. So absolutely, exactly what you're saying. Give him a quick buck and you'll see everything change, just like Australia has done. I mean, it's a thing that everybody has talked about to death, but look at why Australian women's cricket is the way it is. Nowhere produces talent, you know, differently to any other country in the world, but those guys invest in it very seriously. And you were going to throw out some names. I strongly suspect they are the same names that I'm going to throw out, but can you not just like imagine Alia Riaz like doing a real dope Adidas video? Because I can imagine that. I can imagine like the clicks and links and shares and likes and whatever like social media buzzwords exist that I am not cool enough to know about. But it means that if Alia Riaz is going to endorse a sweatshirt, I will buy it. Someone else will buy it. Someone else's daughter will buy it. Someone else's son will buy it. Like, everybody will buy it. So I have no idea what's happening. Who are your names?
Oh, I like a lot of the team, right down from like Omema Sahil, who I think is really good. She's been if we talk about it specific to the South African games that we've seen, she's kind of been left in the lurch a little bit by the top order. She hasn't had that level of support. When you talk about sort of future superstars or, you know, somebody who deserves to be a superstar, Diana Baig, I think, is fantastic. With the ball, you know, you got to love a swinging fast bowler, and that's what she is. But she also offers you those big hits down the ground. She actually reminds me of sort of like a right-handed Wasim Akram in the way she approaches the game, because she's got that down the order ability to get you a century against the West Indies, but also, you know, will take those wickets up top and create like fair, like, you know, when we talk about the dearth of skill and expertise and also experience between them, you know, so when you're up against someone like a Shabnam Ismail, you're always going to find it difficult. So I do feel for that top order. You know, it's going to be difficult, but you shouldn't. And I know it's not strictly speaking fair, but these conversations do arise from people who watch the games. Like, why is Alia Riaz down the order? Should Nidagar come a little bit higher up the order? Should we be tweaking this? Should Fatima Sana be a little bit higher up the order? And Sidra Nawaz is the right option to keep. Like, you know, there's these, like, people get overly critical, and that's hypercritical after 2 games. But you do have a lot of talent, and I don't know if it's been chopped and changed in exactly the right sort of way. Pakistan seem to have this weakness in the middle overs as well, where they struggle to retain a run rate. Like, I know we're used to 6 runs and over, and, like, you know, that's what are you talking about, 6 runs and over? But even you just have to look at the women's New Zealand series at the moment, the women's New Zealand T20 series, the domestic one. I think the average score is between 120 and 130. So, you know, it is different. The scoring rate is different. You have to keep that in mind. Chasing 6 and over, particularly against like 2 of the world's best bowlers that South Africa's women's team has, is never going to be easy. But just for Pakistan to be as competitive as they've been and to push the games to the last few overs is an achievement in and of itself. You got to remember, this is a team that won squeakers against Thailand. So, and no disrespect to Thailand, they played in the World T20, but like, it's not. They should be better than that from their pedigree. You know, as the team that's linked to the Pakistan men's team, they should be better than what they are, and a lot of that is down to the lack of support and infrastructure and blah 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 blah. So I guess it's okay to be optimistic about the Pakistan team, the women's team, but you have to be a little bit patient in the results that are going to come. It's going to be a little bit tricky. Mind you, it was really exciting to see that they're going to extend that African adventure, because they're going to go from South Africa playing the 4 games against them, and then they're going to go on and play 5 games against Zimbabwe. So, you know, again, it might not sound like the sexiest fixture in the world, but it's actually quite a competitive one for Pakistan, and an important one for them as well to score some wins away from home. So, I mean, the good news is, if you're a fan of Pakistani women's cricket, and you should be, there's plenty to watch. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think the 2 matches that we've seen in front of us in South Africa have been phenomenal. They've been a lot of fun. And they've taken one of the best women's sides in the world right down to the wire every single time. You know, we mentioned like some of the best bowlers in the world, Shabnam Ismail, who's on a different level, Marizanne Kapp, Lizelle Lee. It's a very strong team. And to take that team down to the wire in their home conditions, I think is really promising. You're absolutely right. A little bit of patience. I personally think that this group, in terms of talent, is really up there. Maybe more talent, probably more talented than the men's side that we have. It is a shame that the resource question is the way that it is, because a little bit of resources these ladies weigh, and I think that they could be incredibly competitive with the best teams, up there with the best teams in the world, but that takes resources and time. You got to be patient, but there is a lot to watch. And I love that we're getting to be optimistic about Pakistan cricket, not just the, you know, imagination of what it could be, but what we're actually watching in front of us right now. I love that for Pakistani women's cricket.
Yeah, they got to be aspirational with it as well. They can't like take their foot off the pedal. Like, you know, we talk about how well Australia have done. The WBBL is a great tournament, very exciting. New Zealand is moving in that direction too. In England, okay, you know, they had a stop and start thing with the 100 last year, but with the 100 again this year, hopefully, the women will get a pretty cool platform, even certainly with the major broadcasters, even with the men. So Pakistan needs to start thinking about how it can monetize and, you know, package women's cricket domestically. You know, India is taking it slow with the IPL Challenger, but year on year they do add another fixture, so they're building it slowly, if not with any kind of aggression. Whereas I think Pakistan can afford to again take some chances, build some talent pools, and try and get maybe a 3 or 4 team Pakistani domestic women's tournament together. If they could ideally get to 5/6 and mirror the men's, that would be perfect. Like, for me, if they could start, maybe you got to start with a T20 because money, that's fine. But if you can use that to leverage a 50 over series as well, that would be really exciting. So, and I'm sure, to be fair, Wasim Khan, the PCB chief exec, and all the people around him, they're super progressive. They understand the value of women's cricket, understand that it needs to be promoted and pushed and commercialized.
Aatif, we've seen in New Zealand like a massive emphasis now on women's cricket, which has been incredible. And we've actually decided to have double headers with the women's matches and the men's matches scheduled on the same day. And it's actually just added such a different dimension to New Zealand cricket, got a lot of interest in women's cricket. So, even looking at Pakistan cricket, maybe that's something that they could implement in the future, having double headers for the women's PSL teams and the men's PSL teams on the same day.
Absolutely. I suspect that the filling out a full tournament straight off the bat might be difficult, as the Indians found. And I think Pakistan should mirror the Indian model rather than the Australian model, just so it can be what I would hate is if they launched a big women's PSL tournament and it just didn't work because they were underprepared or they rushed into it. I'd like for them to build to it so they can be stable and be around for a long time. But you're bang on about the double headers, Adam. The first women's game I ever watched live in a stadium was the 2009 T20 World Cup final. And I would only have been there. Probably wouldn't have been there had it not been for the second part of the double bill, which is Pakistan versus Sri Lanka in the final of the World T20. Now, sometimes you kind of have to force people into watching these games. If you make it so convenient for them that it's on parallel to the men's game, there's a very strong subconscious signal there that this game is just as important as the men's game and you need to take it seriously. And B, we put it on at the perfect time for you. What you want is more cricket. So we put a game of cricket next to another game of cricket. You can go watch it in the stadium. You can watch it on TV, watch cricket. It's a brilliant way to do it. Double headers are a great way to go. And again, New Zealand just has so many good ideas. Sometimes I wish we could just hand off the administration of Pakistani or most of world cricket to New Zealand.
Another thing New Zealand literally did this week is debut their first women's under-19 side, which is, that's the long-term plan, is to have all of those structures in place that feed into a killer national side. And that is a down-the-line type of thing for Pakistan, as is the women's PSL, as is all of this stuff that we're talking about. But it doesn't happen down the line unless you start putting movements into action right now. I do think the time is right culturally more than anything else, with the way that things are in Pakistan, with the amount of focus and energy and attention that people from all walks of life and all genders are putting on gender related causes. Some of that is a heavier interest in women's sport than ever before. So I think the time is right culturally, socially, in terms of the administration that the PCB has, like you mentioned. This is it, guys. Let's seize it. Let's do it. Let's take this moment.
Absolutely. It's a really exciting time, really. If you're a fan of the game of cricket, all you want to do is watch cricket, and you want to watch cricket of a good standard. And the women's game is at a fantastic standard. The men's game is at an excellent standard. You're getting to watch great cricket. You don't have to watch your local club team in a park. Go watch your local club team in the park if you want to, but you've got some fantastic options at home. And with so much of the world in lockdown, it's really cricket for me has just eased the blow of having to, I can't, in the UK it's really bad. I can't go anywhere. So for me, I watched India, England, I watched Pakistan, New Zealand, I watched literally or every single bit of the Big Bash, and Ireland and Afghanistan and Ireland and the UAE before that. I'm watching everything. It's a wonderful time, and I think yes, cricket has to be responsible. Remember, it's the message is about spreading the game, and that's not just spreading it to different countries and regions. It's spreading it to different groups of people who haven't been able to play it or haven't been highlighted as often. And as we've seen, as the Americans have done in with football, women's football in America. When I say football, I mean, of course, soccer. Yes,
thanks for the translation.
Yeah, no, it had to be done for all you North American weirdos. But they've done so well with that. They've commercialized it beautifully, and this is a model and something that should be aspirational for other countries around the world, especially Pakistan.
Well, guys, what are your predictions for the upcoming Test series between Pakistan and South Africa? I know you're both passionate Pakistan supporters. What do you think the result will be in the Test series?
First of all, I resent being called a passionate Pakistan supporter. I really do. I'll take the passion part, okay? But the only thing at my very core that I am in terms of loyalties is a passionate Essex supporter, okay? And a passionate supporter of, like Aatif said, growing the game amongst countries, amongst peoples. But I think that's just a very Pakistani coping mechanism at its core, maybe. I don't know. I'm not entirely sure, because it gets down to moments like watching Pakistan against New Zealand, and it just leaps out of you, and you tried to suppress it over a number of years, but it comes out. So that resentment about being labeled a Pakistan supporter aside, I think that the test series is probably going to be a 2-0 win for Pakistan. Sorry, 3 matches. 3-0 win for Pakistan. But I think that every single one of those matches are going to have hard-fought moments, but I'm gonna go with my natural optimism there. The T20s, I think, are probably also for Pakistan, so maybe you characterize me right. Maybe I am just a passionate Pakistan supporter at the end of the day.
What's your prediction, Aatif?
I'm going to try and be realistic here. I think with the run, I don't want to. By the way, 9 out of 10 times I'd agree with Taz on everything she just said. I just think, I know they're playing one of the games at Rawalpindi,
Yes.
and I know that Pindi pitches, like, that's where the result is definitely going to happen, right? Whereas you're more likely to get a result at Pindi. Whereas in Karachi, you might get one draw. And I really do think Pakistan have at least one implosion in them. So I think it'll be 1-1 with a draw.
Okay.
All with a draw. What game do you think South Africa's going to take?
I don't know, but I feel like at some point in the tour they will take a game. They've got a very exciting new talent, and they've got a good mix. They're quite even with Pakistan in terms of the skill set thing. Pakistan have the advantage, they've got a home advantage. But I just think, I don't know, I think Pakistan have a better chance of getting their balance wrong than South Africa do. I'd love to be optimistic and say 3-0. And if they win 3-0, I'll be very happy to be wrong.
These are the two very distinct and common ways of being Pakistani, right? Blind optimism, just close your eyes and like jump in head first and be like, nah, it'll be fine, don't worry about it. Or the other, let me prepare my heart because I'm still actually optimistic on the inside, but let me package it so if bad things happen, I feel them less. Either way, both are probably a little bit crazy.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm just, trying to prepare myself for the worst case scenario. You gotta, if you've been heartbroken that many times, you gotta protect yourself a little bit. But yeah, I think I do think realistically they will get a game. They'll definitely get one. Sorry, go on.
I was gonna say the best way to do that would be to root for a different type of team, but I just remembered that your domestic team is Middlesex. So you can get no love, no glory, no comfort.
Listen, my teams lose everything. I like Middlesex. I like the Lahore Qalandars. I like the Melbourne Renegades. Right? Who are at the bottom of the table at the moment, and that has happened for the last 3 seasons. I like Pakistan, obviously, and recently, because I've had a lot of spare time, I've been watching football, and I like Arsenal. And they also lose a lot. So, yeah, I'm very used to being a loser.
So this is how it works for me. I like Essex cricket. I like Islamabad United. And depending on my mood, I like either England or Pakistan. So I have found a way to cope with that. Thank you, Essex and Islamabad, for making all of that copeable. So those are your predictions for the test matches. What about the T20s?
I feel more optimistic about the T20s. They're playing 2 games, aren't they?
Yeah, 2 T20s.
I think it'll be 1-1. I think it'll be on as even. Again, I think Pakistan will let one go. See, I've watched a lot of this Pakistan team recently. Even in England, they should have won that T20 series, but they didn't. And they couldn't defend 190 at Old Trafford the first time around. So I'm thinking South Africa at that point in the tour, maybe it's been a long old tour for them by then. They've been around for a long time. Pakistan should be able to close out a second game, but they've got a heavy workload, maybe with an eye on the PSL. Some people get overzealous. Yeah, I'm going to go 1-1.
I think that actually might be a more fair characterization of this T20 side, because even the changes that were made in New Zealand, three T20 games. First one, God knows what they were doing, actually. God knows what they were. I was about 5 minutes late to that match, and I swear there were the fact that there were already wickets when I walked in, and I was not even Taz amounts of late, okay? Just a smidge late. And then by the time they made any rectifications, it was too late. By the time they made changes that made sense from the absolute get-go, it was a little bit too late. And I know that some of that is getting used to conditions, just walking straight out of isolation, all of the reasons / excuses that exist. But this T20 side is a little bit interesting. Whether it's implosions or lack of experience, I think actually putting it down to a lack of experience might be fair. A lot of these guys, most of their experience, if they have any at all, comes from the PSL, or what, under 19, or the Big Bash. So I think it might just be a lack of experience. But I do think that talent-wise, the T20 series in New Zealand should have been, if you made the right decisions, which you didn't make from the get-go, 2-1 to Pakistan. Actually, instead of you finally winning the last match with the things that were obvious to do from the beginning.
It was that first match though, wasn't it? Because we walked in Eden Park and it was 20 without loss. We walked up to the media room, which was about a 10-minute walk. We looked out the window. Hafiz went for a big slog and got caught at mid on, mid off. I can't remember which one position.
Yeah.
And then suddenly it was 30 for 3 off 6 overs, and it was well, game over. And you think Hafiz, being the experienced player that he is, wouldn't play such a rash shot in his third delivery. And then all that game, after they lost 3 or 4 wickets, boom,
it's so Hafiz. It's so Hafiz.
It's hard to be critical of him, though. He had one of the most extraordinary years of his career in T20 cricket last year. Isolated instant poor shot. I think everybody has those poor judgments in them. I think even he would admit that he's not one of those up right at the top world class great legendary players. But what he has become is a bit of a T20 specialist, and he's got runs in circumstances where few around him have, playing that kind of modern Misbah role. I think he's somebody who's going to get runs for Pakistan in their T20 series for sure. But that wasn't a great shot. They do have the ability. So this is the thing: when they lose a big player like that, it's difficult to see where the runs are coming from down the order, aside from a few hits and stuff. So I think they've got it in them to lose one of these games. I would love to be wrong, by the way. I'd love for them to sweep the Test series 3-0 and sweep the T20 series 2-0, and then see exactly what it is that Pakistan fans and media are complaining about at that point. Because I guarantee you they'll find something to complain about. But I'm watching, and I'm just looking forward to it as a fan of just the cricket. It'll be fun to watch Pakistan play the long form again. It'll be nice.
It's just having cricket back in Pakistan, though, isn't it? That's the exciting thing, isn't it?
It's beautiful, man. I can't.
There's just been a lack of obviously, cricket only going back to international cricket to Pakistan in the last year or so. So just to have cricket back in Pakistan, and we just know how passionate the country is about cricket. The only shame is it's happening now during COVID times where there's no crowds. That's the big shame about this, because we know that if crowds were allowed out, then the stadiums would be jam packed full of passionate fans, and it's always a hard place for touring teams to play. A lot of great sides have gone over there and have struggled to win over Pakistan. So, it's just it's a shame that home field advantage and run respect Pakistan don't quite get without having the passionate crowds in the stands.
Yeah, I mean, there's some comfort to knowing that you can drive home from a cricket ground. I feel like, which will manifest itself into some kind of advantage. But you're absolutely right. I was there in 2019 in December when, the first day of international cricket in Pakistan for 10 years, when they played Sri Lanka, and it was an incredible atmosphere. And, they're talking about trying to bring a live crowd in for the PSL games. Now, I don't know if that's a good or a bad idea, but, it's almost beside the point. The idea is they recognize, the PCB recognize, the administration, the players, they all recognize the value of having fans there live, not just in terms of like, yay fans and great atmosphere, but also the pressure it creates, really, really ramming home that home advantage. When it feels like home when you got like 30,000 Bindi boys around the stadium, making cheers and jeering at the South African players, and that's something that they will miss. You're absolutely right, but baby steps. So we got them in. We got South Africa to come to Pakistan. That's one bit. Next time, hopefully, we get them. We'll have a crowd there as well.
I mean, there's a generation of Pakistan players that have never played in front of your home crowd. They have played it at UAE in front of 3 people and a dog in the stadium.
Yeah, I think the team that started against Sri Lanka in 2019, that was their first home Test match ever. None of the team had played Test cricket in Pakistan before, so it was really bizarre. But since that series happened, they, a few of them have that they got a feel for the Test cricket at home, but also they play so much first-class cricket now that playing that long form at home should come as second nature. Maybe that's another reason the selectors will put the high performers in the first-class tournament, because they reckon, let's make sure we've got people who know how to play this format on these grounds in our team, rather than the guys that have been traveling all year. I mean, who knows? Just prognosticating here. That's not a real word. I made that up. But it's impossible to know how it's going to manifest itself. But it is quite nice just to see those beautiful grounds. The National Stadium in Karachi is gorgeous. They're playing the T20s in Lahore, and Gaddafi, as we know, is gorgeous. And then that beautiful Rawalpindi Cricket Stadium is, it's just a lovely place to watch cricket. And it'll be nice that at least, even though the fans aren't there, they'll have the media will be there. There'll be loads of these. There'll still be bodies around the stadium that'll make them feel quite comfortable, relaxed, and homely in the end. So hopefully it won't hurt too much.
So, okay, I'm going to ask you both a question. What's one player from each team that you're looking forward to watching in the series?
Is that for the Test series?
Or for both series?
Okay. God, that's actually a hard question. I think I am looking forward to watching Faf, because who isn't, for the Test cricket. And then I think it's probably Yannaman for me for the T20. I'll do South Africa, you can do Pakistan.
Okay. For Pakistan, it's got to be Fawad Alam for me. Homecoming for him. He's coming back a hero. He's got his ton. He's got that first ton now. Now let's see you make some runs in your home conditions, boy. This is your home ground, right? This is where you got that 68 average. Let's see some runs, lad. And in the T20s, if he plays Abdullah Shafiq, again, I think he's got boundless talent. I love watching him play in the national T20 and the PSL. I think he can go places.
Fantastic. Thanks for that, guys. Look, Aatif, thanks very much for joining this episode of the Cricketers. It's been a pleasure having you on the show this week with all your great knowledge and your expertise, humour.
Wait, that's it? I thought we were doing 3-4 more hours, man. What? You're cutting me short?
We had a quick powwow. We had a little powwow and we were like, oh my God, we have to do another one with Aatif during the series at some point. Maybe when we come back and look at our predictions and assess them and manage to do another 4 hours on how optimistic or unoptimistic we shoulda, coulda, woulda been.
Well, let's be honest, the world is crying out for that, so we absolutely should. I'm snowed in over here in London, so I'm very happy to do it whenever you guys want.
We'll just do a 24-hour podcast.
Yeah, why not? No, I mean, we've got to leave time for the Big Bash, buddy. So after the Big Bash, so no problem.